Okay, welcome back to Rolling Stories, the HR podcast where we explore journeys and insights from HR leaders shaping the future of work. I'm Adrian Tan, and welcome back to another season and another episode. Today is a special milestone for all of us here because for the very first time, I have a co-host. And my co-host sitting right here with me. Manu, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, everyone. My name is Manu. For those who don't know me, I am the founder and CEO of Rolling Aries, which is the firm that I founded in 2009. I am passionate about HR technology and transformations, and of course, my conversations with the CHRO. And I'm grateful that Aileen, who's the CHRO of Singtel, is here, and I get to talk to her today. So thank you very much, Adrian, for inviting me as the co-host. As you can see, I'm a little bit nervous, but I would get along with you. Yeah.
And of course, before we even touch on you, Aileen, we were actually cracking our head because for season 4, episode 1, we actually have Dave Ulrich coming onto the show, which is a great accomplishment on our part. But having said that, it always begs the question, how do we top it?
How do we top it?
Yeah, how do we top it? So that was really a very mind-cracking exercise for us. So we are very happy to announce today. I think we managed to crack it. We managed to top it. Aileen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And of course, for everyone here, you can see that we are doing it in person. No more shady background of my bedroom and stuff like that, which I know our producer is not very happy about. So here we are, all this in person. So I think we like to start off with something which is a bit on a lighter note. That is, what is one thing about you that most people, even those people that you work closely with, might be surprised to learn about you?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Perhaps maybe one of the first thing that I'd love to share with people is that actually my background was in statistics and computer science, so it's not so much around the social sciences perspective, right?
Which is so different for the HR.
It's very different because it's really all around logic, algorithm, problem solving. But somehow I really love math. I love numbers, right? So when I graduated, I actually wanted to be a school teacher, right?
Wow.
So a lot of people did not realize that that's something I really wanted. And I actually applied, to the Ministry of Education to be a school teacher. But I did not manage to get a placement to teach mathematics in secondary school.
Oh,
So
okay.
ended up, I think it was a bit unexpected, but somehow, I just decided that perhaps, I'll just venture into the private sector, and ended up, I was a management associate with a Japanese organization as my first job. I must say that it's through the experience, that I somehow discovered I do have a passion for people, and especially around how do you bring, develop people perhaps, to their fullest potential, right? And I'm always excited about that, so throughout the entire management associate journey itself, I really found, what I really wanted to do for my career.
One thing that comes to my mind is I think the entire Singtel got to be thankful that MOE did not give you
Yeah.
a mathematics role to teach.
But you never know. So I guess perhaps, when I eventually retired from Singtel, I may go back to teaching.
Oh, really?
Right?
Yeah.
It's still a bit in my blood, I must say that.
Yeah. I mean, teaching is always something that is instantly satisfying.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you see the faces of the people and they feel that they're learning, then it is amazing, actually.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Eileen, I wanted to ask you that at the start of your career, you defined yourself as textbook smart, and then you managed to understand exactly that what is something that you shouldn't do or you do. What is your experience about leadership from your first job that you shared with us?
All right. It was a hard lesson that I have to learn, during my first job, right? And I had a team that almost literally walk out, wanted to. So I remained very, very grateful to the supervisor who was actually leading that team. And she came forward and told me that, that I have to adjust my leadership style. I have to listen a lot more. I have to allow my people to speak up, right? And she acknowledged the fact that I was a smart leader in her opinion,
Okay.
textbook smart,
Uh-huh.
but it's not working.
Yeah, your statistics were speaking that time probably.
Exactly, right? And perhaps even many of the management books that I've read to talk about vision, mission, purpose, but it does not work because it's too theoretical,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not putting it to real, what I call real authentic practice. So I remain very grateful to this particular supervisor who actually, I must say that she decided she would speak up and she came forward. And I'm also very glad that I listened.
Because it's a
Right?
hard discussion.
Exactly. It was a
Yeah.
difficult one. And I took it on board and I
okay.
reflected. I reflected. And on that basis itself, I have also decided that the next morning, I thought that it was only the right thing to do was to apologize to my team.
Oh, wow.
Every single one of them.
I've made their life a bit harder than it should,
Uh-huh.
right? Coming to work has to be a joy. It cannot be
Yeah.
something they drag coming to every day and having to work with a supervisor perhaps, that was difficult to work with in the first place was not exactly something they look forward to. So I have to reflect on my staff, right? And
Okay.
I counted on them, to provide me with more feedback in terms of how I can be a better leader along the way.
Okay.
So
That's
it
quite
was
courageous.
exactly. It was a hardest lesson I have to learn when I was in my early 20s, but it was one of the best lesson I've learned as a leader. So I think with that in mind, I've adjusted my style a lot, right? And asked myself, how do I build an authentic and perhaps a trust based relationship with people. So with that, it means that I have to really work on relationship,
Yes.
right? I have to work on being a credible leader. I have to work on being very reliable, in the sense that whatever I've committed to, I deliver. But I think the most important underlying factor would be the intent,
Yes.
right? What is the intent?
Yeah.
So if the intent is all about making myself look good, then I think that could not be the right intent for my people. But if the intent is about uplifting my people, uplifting, unleash their potential, then I think that is the right intent,
Yeah.
right? So I think that matters a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think as a leader, it is all about them, Aileen, right? And that's something that you were courageous enough to basically adopt the feedback and exercise. And probably your mentor saw the big HR leader in you, Aileen, that time. And that you ended up becoming, yeah.
But I guess it was also, if I may say, at that point in time, just reflecting on the reaction from my people's face, they were in shock. They did not expect their leader to come forward in the morning, inviting everyone for breakfast.
Yeah.
I single-handedly brought all the drinks and the breakfast and showed up in the room. And I think it was really a surprise to every one of them. And in fact, some of them were very shocked. But I guess, that appeals to this group of people who said that, okay, let us give another try to make it work, right? And most of the time, working relationships actually take two hands to clap. So I have to make sure that I'm the one to bring out my hand first, right? That allows the people and empower them and give them the confidence, right, to also bring out their hand. And with two hands, when we have a good handshake, that's where the team comes together to deliver the right outcome.
Yes.
One thing I take away from here is hard discussion are needed. And it's good to have them early in your life because it's like having LASIK when you are young. You have the ROI for a very long time. So having those lessons early on, I think may have really shaped how you approach life in general and of course your work principles, which is a good segue for us to talk about some of the things that you have done in your current organization, especially this people strategy called BIG, which is an acronym for Belonging, Impact, and Grow. For the audience and viewers who is not so familiar with it, could you share with us exactly what is BIG and how has this framework improved overall employee engagement?
All right. So this goes back to maybe as far back as 2021, right? And where we had an opportunity to bring together leaders to explore what is the purpose of the organization. Okay, we spent time, we asked ourselves, being at that point in time, we are 140-year-old, and we asked ourselves, so what is that North Star for us at Singtel Group, right? And that purpose was to empower every generation. And what we meant was to make sure that we give people the confidence to act, enable them to act, and make sure, it's inclusive. And not just for the current generation, but for many generations to come. Now, with that purpose in mind, which is our North Star, everyone is very clear about the why, right? Then the next step is really asking ourselves, how are we going to deliver this purpose? And that will be the values of the organization. So I think when we have our purpose, which is really around the why, and the values is about the how, then what does this mean in terms of culture for the organization? And again, we had the opportunity of bringing a group of leaders to talk about this. And I still remembered that when we were describing what our own experience were, interestingly, 3 big words came about. The first one was really the sense of belonging, right? Many of us feel that the purpose resonated with us very much. And that actually brings about what I call the sense of belonging, whereby we feel we can be the best of ourselves at work. That's very important, right? We don't have to bring a different self. And next thing was we asked ourselves, what was the difference that we can make? Then we realized that actually through the work that we've been doing as a connectivity organization, communication, technology, we have been making impact to people's life, right? Through digital revolution, we enabled them. So we realized that a lot of work that we're doing were impactful. We're able to make an impact. And last but not least, we look around our fellow colleagues and ourselves. Many of us have been with the organization for a while. And some of them started off as an apprentice, and some of us were mid-career. Even a mid-career leader, like employee by myself, I've been with the company for 17 years. So what keeps us going? And a lot has to do with the fact that we're able to grow both personally and professionally. Now, so when we saw these 3 words, which is really belonging, impact, and grow, just showed up in the people's conversation, and we realized this is really our culture. And interestingly, belonging, impact, and growth is B, I, and G.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So this is really what we describe as our big culture, right? So you think about it this way, when we are very clear about our purpose and we are clear about our values, we know exactly how to behave. And this actually would have manifested in the day-to-day decisions, day-to-day interaction, day-to-day engagement with employees, which is our big culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the things that when we think about culture, it's about them, and organization think that, we will make a culture which is beneficial to the business. And in your case, when you made it big, the grow is actually about them. I think which is a beautiful way to convey at the end of the day. If people feel that they are growing, I think that's all what they would ask for, actually.
Yeah. And people generally felt connected to the purpose, which is really very important. And they could align their actions also to the values, right? Those are really important. Now, so last but not least, if you think about it, if our employees feel that they are big, they are typically a lot more engaged.
Yeah.
Correct? And when they are more engaged, we know they are a lot more motivated and they are more productive, right? And they stay longer. And actually what is really key is that they want to make a difference to the stakeholders. And that's really key.
I'm reminded of this quote. I'm not sure how true this story is. JF Kennedy went to NASA, met two janitors. First janitor, what do you do here? Oh, I clean the place. The other janitor, what do you do here? I put a man on the moon. So I think this really reinforced also from the individual perspective on the kind of purpose that you can bring to the organization, regardless of the role. It can be a frontline crew, it can be a big manager, but there is this sense of purpose that would really help to drive not just yourself, the entire organization, and also the people around you forward. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
In business, a lot of people feel that purpose is just a statement or collection of words. But honestly, it is the leadership job actually to get everybody aligned to that purpose. So everybody really feels part of it, which is quite difficult actually in business. But if you actually just convey that and feel passionate about it, I think everybody then connects to the purpose and then say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm putting man on the moon actually. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. and very importantly, I have to say that, a purpose statement got to be short, right? And impactful
Yes.
and must resonate with the people.
Yeah.
Okay, they got to feel for it, right? And somehow, if we decide that purpose is just a flavor of the month, right? And you do a rah-rah show, you do a couple of change management, and you communicate to your employees at that point in time. It's just a good program. It's a feel-good program for maybe a couple of days.
Yeah.
Now, the question right now is really, how do you embed that purpose, within the entire organization, in everything we do? Okay. And so you think about it, if you go to a cinema and you have this very nice sense around, right? Sense around, sound system. So the way we got to think about purpose, it got to be something like, how do you actually embed it in a way that is like a sense around within the entire organization, whereby people live and breathe with it.
Yeah. Speaking of people, Aileen, in your years of HR initiatives that you've driven, what is the most surprising thing that you found about people, which is beyond compensation and benefits?
Actually, interestingly, we did years back, we did a survey with all our employees. We asked our employees actually what attracted you to the organization and what makes you leave the organization. And I have to say that compensation was not listed number one in both situations.
Okay.
Right. So, and what are the levers, that employees were mentioning were like growth, sense of belonging. We can make a difference. So the big is in a way our big culture resonated, right? At the same time, I think people are also asking for fairness. They're asking for wanting to work with the organization with integrity, doing the right thing. They want to work with an organization that is sustainable, that is resilient, making a difference to the stakeholders. So I think these are really going to be important. We realize that things like purpose, recognition and development are equally really important, right? So to some extent, I have to say that in the past, as a HR practitioner, one of the very common terms that we use was employee value proposition.
Yeah.
Right? So when we talk about employee value proposition, the process is always one that we start to list items and said that, okay, from a remuneration perspective, let's just list out good salary, incentive program, benefits program. So we start to list item by item, right? Flexible benefits, flexible work arrangement, and then we went on to list training and development items, right? So we said, okay, we offer this very nice list of items for you as an employee.
It's like a catalog.
Exactly. It's a catalog, right?
Yeah.
It's a catalog, and we call this our employee value proposition.
Yes.
But what's actually quite interesting was it was such a big catalog that at the end of the day, it's like how I put it, you walk into a buffet, a buffet in a hotel restaurant.
Yeah.
For instance, in a restaurant with buffet, that you find quite difficult to say, okay, let me just go and find out what I should be eating, what I should be taking. So it was a bit tricky. And we decided that to change the way we think about employee value proposition over time and start to ask ourselves, if indeed our culture is a big one, then what would be a big experience for our people? And we start to reflect on experience, which means that we want to curate experience, right? At the point in time when you first join the organization, what kind of experience you should be encountering, correct? And as you think about learning, again, going back to when we speak to the concept of learning, remember I was saying our growth is all about personal and professional, not just professional.
Yes.
Because we think that when we are looking at our employee, it's important for them not just to grow from a perspective of just job-related knowledge, but how can they be a lot more effective as a human being, for instance?
Yeah.
Right? So it actually changed the way we think around what employee value proposition is all about. So I think that really makes an impact. So as we speak to your earlier question, is compensation, beyond compensation, what else do we do? So from employee value proposition, now we move to employee experience. And we actually brand it in our own way, the big experience.
Okay. I've always thought about HR that everybody can offer money. Everybody can offer a role. These are similar roles. There are many roles available in different businesses, but the experience is something that makes the business different. And that's why somebody would join, or probably the best talent would join. And I think once the best talent join, Aileen, we know in HR, everything else basically follows, right? Then the business will grow and the profits will come in. But yeah, I think that is a great point about experience is the most important thing rather than just looking at a catalog of benefits.
Yes, indeed. And when the talent joined us, it's just the beginning of a journey, right?
Yes.
Now, then the next step is really how do you unleash the full potential of this talent? And one of the things that we advocate a lot is not to just stay within your own domain. Okay, we encourage our employees, all our employees to go beyond what we call a T-shaped career, right? To go into a pie. A pie, 3.142, a pie career, whereby you have different domain expertise. Okay, we encourage everyone to do that. And we always laugh about it internally and said that, go beyond even a pie. Let's just have an MBS career, right? The three pillar, the three tower.
Okay.
It's just something that we just laugh about and joke about. Now, but joke aside, if you think about it, is to allow our employees to have optionality.
Yes.
Right? Even myself, right? While I'm looking after the people agenda, I look after the sustainability agenda at the same time. So I'm considered to have two pillars.
Yes.
And that's important. So the moment our employees understand some of this concept, they take a lot more accountability and they take a lot more ownership. So it goes beyond just you join as a talent, but we want you to be a talent even when you are, experiencing your career with us.
This seems to be very much the approach for many startups where they see the potential of an individual and they're not restricted by the job title.
Yes.
They're not restricted by the function or the discipline of their bachelor degree or diploma, but they're being deployed to where they can really flourish. And of course, by doing so, it helps the organization. And when you mentioned earlier on about the buffet line, I'm really reminded of what you mentioned earlier on. What textbook tells you, which probably would tell you the same thing, list down all this kind of stuff, give to your people, may not necessarily, again, translate well in real life. Yeah, it's like, every time for me, if I go into a Hong Kong cafe, I can never order anything. 200 items on the menu. I do not know where to start. So it's always create that abundance friction for you. But if you're able to curate it down to something more bite-sized or something that is more personalized, I think that will always be very relevant for people. And on that note, I'm really curious to understand, because you probably have seen so many times where things in textbook doesn't translate well to real life. What are some of the more unconventional examples that you may have applied within your corporate setting when it comes to, maybe something that the textbook say would work, but it didn't work, or textbook would say it wouldn't work, but it actually worked in real life? Are there some examples that you can cite?
It's an interesting question, right? What works in textbook and what did not quite work? I have to say that along the way, I stopped reading textbook. Okay, so, all right, joke aside. Now, maybe when we look at our talent, right? And we realized that our talent, obviously, they were exploring also external opportunities. And we are a large group of 25,000 employees. Okay, so if you think about it, each year we're bound to have attrition. So we lose people to another companies. And the reason why was that they felt that there are not enough opportunities for them internally, number one. And they also feel that it is difficult to apply an internal job, right? And why was it difficult? Because there were many rules that were set internally for internal mobility. For instance, it's very common. So imagine if I want to seek out another opportunity within the organization. First thing I have to do is I will let my supervisor know that I'm thinking of applying that job. Let's just say I am a talent. Very likely my supervisor felt, oh my God, I better keep my talent.
Absolutely.
Why let my talent be rotated somewhere else?
Yeah.
So my supervisor will be convincing me perhaps not to apply, right? And next thing is that I realized, oh my God, I have not been in my job for 2 years. So the company policy said that I cannot apply for any rotation unless I have been in a job
Completed.
for at least 2 years, right? So there are some of these internal guidelines that you will find in many textbooks that will say that, okay, for internal mobility, you typically apply some of these criteria. Now, if you think about this, these criteria never existed in the external world. Because if I want to apply for external job somewhere else, do I need to tell my supervisor? I don't need to let my supervisor know. Next thing is that do they really care whether I've been in a job for 2 years or not? Not really. Third thing is very likely they would not be thinking about whether I'm applying a job that's one grade more higher than my current job or one grade lower than my current job, right? The external world will never have such rules. Internally, we may even have rules that you cannot apply a job that is 3 grades above yours, or neither should you be applying a job 3 grades below yours, right?
Yeah.
So all these rules never apply in the external world, if you think about it. Now, internally, textbook answer most of the time, some guidelines will tell you should have some of these internal mobility guidelines. Now, one of the things that we did was that we literally democratized it. What we meant, we democratized both internal and external. So from a mobility perspective, we open up what we call a talent marketplace, which means that treat it like external. You can apply any job you want to, and we no longer have those internal guidelines, and we actually remove everything.
Oh, excellent.
It was a big change. It was really
in such a large
big,
organization like
yes,
Singtel.
it was a big change. Now, when we did that, were there some pushback from some of our managers? And obviously there were. But we were very clear and said that, if we have to lose a talent to another external organization, I'd rather lose the talent internally.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Right? Or rather not lose, retain the talent internally.
Exactly.
If you think about it, that perspective. So it's a very radical, I would say it's quite a radical mindset change. Okay. And we embrace it. And after which, about implementing these policies for 2 years, in fact, we saw internal transfer increase manifolds. Today we have about, I think, a quarter to 30% would have applied internally.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
So actually it helps us with a lot of retention.
And I think this is like, in a way you think of it like a first principle thinking or a thinking against common belief. Like common belief is that everybody, like it's a given, right, for leaders to think internally, oh, we've got a large organization, I need to retain my team and I won't let my person go somewhere else, even in another team. And I think that's a bold move, Aileen. And did you find any challenge internally, or that was taken across.
Generally taken across. So
Wow.
people accepted it. But obviously, we will have some of our employees are still a bit apprehensive. Maybe should I let my supervisor know, or or should I not know? Let my supervisor know. But it goes back to trust.
Yep.
So if you trust your supervisor, you would have discussed such career opportunities with your supervisor and said that I'm thinking about that. Can I get some of your coaching or some of your advice? It makes the organization a lot more open. That's the kind of culture we want to see.
That's
I would definitely imagine there'll be some friction, especially from the people manager, supervisor
of
from the
course,
get-go.
yeah.
But ultimately, if you think about it, they also get the benefit from it.
yeah.
Because it also applies to them. They can also go through the internal route. They can apply 3 grades more, 3 grades down, whatever it is. So I think overall, I feel this is really a very interesting way of looking at things, because why are we building so many rules internally? To restrict ourselves when the competition is actually not within ourselves. The war is out there.
Exactly. So this is a massive paradigm shift. In fact, what was also very interesting, because when we have another staff actually taking on another role within the organization, most of the time you couldn't get the replacement immediately. So the immediate supervisor may come back and say that until I will release, quote unquote, the word release this person when I have my replacement on board. Now, think about it externally.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't work because the person served the notice and would just leave.
Yeah.
So in our case, we adopt the same policy.
Okay.
So, it's not a situation whereby, it's not a case whereby you have to wait for the replacement to come on board before we can release the talent. It won't work this way.
That's a big accomplishment, Aileen, for implementing that. And speaking of accomplishments, in your career across Singtel, you've got many awards and responsible for probably creating many initiatives. And in fact, I remember last time when we met was at SG Tech Gala Award, where you received the award from SG Tech. That's a great accomplishment, Aileen. And speaking of accomplishments in your career across Singtel, you won many awards. In fact, last time when we met was at this SG Tech Gala dinner. What do you think that other organizations, big or small, could adapt from the initiatives that you've felt very successful that have gone in Singtel?
I stopped counting, all right? In the sense that, no, what I meant is that we, over the years, if you look at it, right, what we have done was when we decided that this particular program or initiative is going to be impactful to our employees, the first thing we did was that we must start it. Because if we over ideate or we over plan, over project manage, nothing gets started.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to start somewhere. So very clearly, when the idea comes about and we think that this is going to be impactful, we as an organization, we quickly will pick on it and we will start. So we'll start the prototype. Now, the moment we get into that implementation, we will learn, because we start to see what worked and what did not work. And we can improve the next iteration, okay? And with that refinement, we will get to almost, how do I put it, 80-20 rule, right? That 80% will largely work.
Yes.
So we left with 20% of maybe, a bit of creative refinement every year. So we did that. We used that as a model and we're able to scale very, very quickly. And over time, we sustain. So if you think about that kind of programs that we have, typically they are programs that run for a decade already. Like, I give you an example, our Learning Fiesta. In fact, Learning Fiesta started about 16 years ago.
Okay.
And the reason why we wanted to do that was to create a learning day for all our employees. So that is the day that you do not need to ask for approval to attend training. And so in a way, we democratize learning. How do we do that? So we create a lot of 2 hours sessions covering various topics, from soft skills to hard skills to emerging technology. Now, Learning Fiesta must have gone on for the last 15 years or something like that. So we started back in 2008 or 2009, I can't remember specifically, but every year without fail. we will have Learning Fiesta. So how do we do that? Again, whether it's during COVID time, totally virtual, or, on site, and from a 1 day, now we even do it like 2 weeks. So we create a fiesta whereby people will continue to learn. Now, so what does this tell us something? That we're able to scale it over time and we sustain it. So we make sure that when we work, we must sustain it. So it's not going to be a flavor of the month. So you see many of the programs that we have, whether it's from engagement, from learning, from even running a CSR program, actually we do it in the same manner. Okay, people who know us would also share with you is that, like, come to engagement survey, we will survey our staff around the same time every year, regardless of what happened. That's our position, right? And we never drop. So I think if I may say, the lesson that we learn is that, impact never come from a one-off initiative. If you really want to deliver really great impact from people program, it got to be sustainable. That's number one. And the other thing is that I also thought it's important to be strategic and to be very thoughtful about it. So ask ourselves from a perspective is that, what's the long-term vision that we have? The moment I think about long-term vision, I give you an example. When we had our Learning Fiesta, I never thought about Learning Fiesta as an event of that year. So when we designed it and we thought about it, I was already thinking about the next 3 Learning Fiesta, right? But that allowed us to think about such an initiative in a much sustainable manner, number one. But we do it in a very pragmatic and very practical manner. So we don't, how I put it is that we will never allow, like, for instance, heavy and complex administrative and logistic details, to stop us from pursuing the idea. So we'll make it a lot more bite-sized, implementable. So it's very pragmatic, all right? And very grounded, I must say. Now, I thought was really interesting that I also wanted to address one point. You said they are award-winning. So when we started the journey, it was never around winning award. That never come as the first priority. Okay. In fact, I guess, the most satisfying award got to come from our staff acknowledgement that such initiative has indeed make an impact and make a difference to them. Right. So many of our programs, I have to say that over the years, as we were running it, every time when we complete, like for instance, a Learning Fiesta, it's very heartening to see many of our employees coming back and tell me, oh, this year Learning Fiesta is really interesting. You cover 2 topics, and these are interesting topics, that was not covered last year. I find it really impactful to what I'm doing. Now, I have to say, this really warms our heart. This tells us that we are in the right direction.
You always mention a flavor of the month and sustainability. No wonder why you took sustainability as your second portfolio, because I guess nothing is flavor of the month, right, Aileen? At the end of the day, you have to sustain, you have to be consistent and keep doing it forever. And I think that's when the results will come in, right? Otherwise, it's just like one thing you do at a time and then there is no result because there is nothing without consistency. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm curious to find out about all this initiatives process, because it seems like there's a lot of different initiatives at Singtel, and all these are very on point to address whatever concerns, issues they may have. How do you identify what are some issues that has to be addressed, or what are some of the upcoming initiatives that your team should start looking at when you plan ahead? Does that also account for the fact that, and I would imagine, a large part on how younger people operate very differently?
Okay, so maybe I share with you one emerging area, AI. Right? AI. Now, obviously, AI has been around for many years, right? I still remember I had a very good friend of mine. In fact, he has a master's in AI that he got 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Wow.
That
Yes,
existed.
right. So you imagine AI has been around actually for a long, long time. Right?
You must be having a queue outside his room actually to get advice.
Yeah,
The
no,
OG.
but what's interesting is that perhaps compared to 30 years ago, I would say AI has commoditized, quote unquote.
Yes.
Right? And maybe the word is not commoditized. Maybe the word should be democratized. In the sense that maybe I use the word, it has been, I wouldn't say commoditized yet. It's still expensive, but definitely cheaper than 30 years ago, maybe.
Yes.
But democratized for sure. So many of us actually are supercharged, by using AI every day, if you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Then the question right now is that how do we get our employees ready? Our generations of employee, whether you're my young talents to my more silver talents, how do we get them ready? So we have decided that AI is for everyone. And AI will be easy for everyone. So if we take that as a position, then how do we build a foundational program for all our employees?
Okay.
So we actually created or developed awareness and training program for all employees, and they have to go through it. Okay, and that is like a 4-hour module that you just run through it. You understand a bit more what AI is all about, and you get to play around with some tools, right?
Okay.
So in a way, you're supercharged to some extent, and most of these tools are co-pilot type of
Yes.
tools.
Pretty easy to use today.
Exactly, they're like co-pilot, right? It's just another So you're supercharged from that perspective, and then we had some of us may have to go through about another 4 more modules to be a bit more sophisticated, versus some of our people they are really AI practitioner because they'll be using it in their work, right? And of course, we will do have our AI experts as well. So we kind of like have different segments of employees playing around with AI. Now, when we created that and encouraged our people and set a goal that every employee to some extent will be AI enabled and AI aware, it was quite a tall order, And I actually told my team, I want to achieve this at least 50% of our employees, to some extent would get this form of training within 6 months, 7 months. And then we'll cover the balance the rest of the year. So give us 12 months, we'll get there. Today, after we started the journey, I've said that we should be coming to 50% of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And imagine that topic that we were talking was like late last year, and we are really going full steam. So what I'm getting into is really when we set our mind to get it done, you will see that we will put all our heart and our efforts, our hands all on it, and every one of us will charge single direction. And that's very important. Now, so when you ask a question around some of these very more emerging topics, very purpose-driven, you could see that every one of us, when we got our head around as an organization, we all was charged ahead as one line. And that's very important. Very collective, very collaborative manner as well.
Yeah. And I think this is such a big thing, Aileen, that I was with a friend of mine who's in McKinsey, and he was saying, Manu, most of the projects that we are getting is FTE impact and job redesign. So first you have 1,000 people. So let's say, how do you make 600? Because 400 work can be done by the AI. And then how do you redesign for the 600? But in reality, we are actually redesigning, and we are telling that AI is not going to take a job. And to start off for such a big organization like Singtel, if you basically make them familiar with AI, then they don't think AI is an enemy, and they think about themselves, and you get a AI enabled talent in your organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think along the line of supercharging yourself, right? Now, but the challenge we have as well, I've got to be very open about this. We may have some of our employees who are quite clear that they do not want a co-pilot kind of world.
Oh, okay.
And they are not interested in doing anything else. That
Oh, really?
is, in this new frame, there will be. It's common everywhere. In every organization, you're bound to have a cohort
Absolutely. Yeah.
that perhaps, maybe a bit more challenging to bring them on board.
Yeah, the 80-20 that you
Exactly.
spoke
So you're
about.
bound to have. So what do you do?
Yeah.
Now, of course, we will do everything we can to encourage, right? And bring them on board as much as we can. But in circumstances that we can't, and we have to move ahead, so to some extent, I have to say the employer perhaps has made a choice. The choice is saying that I'm not moving ahead, I have decided to stay behind. But it's a choice, right? They're bound to be. Now, we have to be pragmatic about it. As an organization, we will do everything we can to provide the best opportunities for our employees to get themselves ready through training, like you said, through mobility, to exploring what I call my MBS career or my Pi career. All these are on the table.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like I said, if you really want to be fit physically, you have to exercise.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
If you want
There's
to
no
be
shortcut.
future ready, you have to learn.
Yeah. Aileen, I wanted to ask you that in our earlier briefing, we were discussing that HR takes care of everyone, takes care of employee welfare. And in Singtel, thousands of people actually, and HR will deal with the human emotions, will manage them and increase their productivity. Who takes care of HR? I mean, in dealing with people, you will burn out, of course, from an emotional perspective, from many, many angles. What is your view about that, actually, that who takes care of them, of their burnout?
I'm a HR practitioner myself. So who takes care of myself as a HR person? Okay. Now, so I, as a HR leader, if you ask me, I have to take care of my people for sure. As a leader, just fundamental about leadership, right? So I hope to be able to take care of them. But I would speak to also, how do I take care of my people, right? Obviously, I think the number one is really got to always help them to build capacity, to help them to develop capabilities. These are very important because when you have the capacity, you are a lot more resilient, for sure, right? When you have the capability, you always feel that you're a lot more confident. Because when you feel that you're a bit more confident, you feel yourself a bit more resilient, I have to say that actually that gives you a lot more energy, a lot of more positivity, and optimism. That helps, a lot to bring people along. Now, there will be moments, obviously, that I think people may not be at their best self. Now, the question right now is that we have to make people feel safe that they can speak up. We got to make people feel safe that it is okay not to be okay at times. Now, the moment we let people feel that way, and they realize, okay, today I'm not at my best. I just need to take a couple of hours to have a break. That's fine. Give people that space. The moment you're able to do that, actually people do feel that they are a lot more empowered, right?
Yes.
Now, the other thing that I think is really important is that sometimes, HR can be really a thankless job. We all know that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So for all the good things that you do, at times you get people who come back and say thank you to you, but we can't take that for granted, right? And we should not be expecting it in our job to some extent, right? We are taught that way, maybe. Now, but nonetheless, I think it is still very important for us to continue to celebrate our profession, right? Whereby when there's opportunity to talk about how we can value add, to our organization, value add to our stakeholders, I'll make it a point that, we should do that. And we among ourselves should always celebrate the impact that we make as well. Now, I think as a leader, that's something I feel very passionate about, that I really want to make sure that we take care of people from this dimension. Now, however, I'm sure among the audience over here, some of us are HR leaders ourselves. Then who's going to take care of ourselves? Because we also will be going through, we can be burnt out as well, right? Now, I ask myself the question, have I felt burnt out at times? Yes, I do, because I do have a lot on my plate. But do I feel that I am helpless? I don't.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I feel at times the work can be demanding, but I do not feel helpless. In fact, I always felt that I have been very blessed. I've been very supported. Now, where do you get the support from? You get your support from people around you. The first one got to be the closest one at home, right? Family and friends. Okay, so they always will have our back, right? And when we need their support, we have to be bold enough and be courageous enough just to say that, can you help me with this? And obviously with fellow colleagues, your supervisors, your peers, and also your own team. And I'm not shying about that. I have to say that. I'm totally not shying about that. So whenever I need help, or even people who are in my community, people in the network, and And when I feel that I needed some level of support, I know I can count on them. But this got to be reciprocal, because if I want to count on others, I also have to be prepared for others to count on me too.
Yes.
Right? And I realized that sometimes this kind of two-way reciprocal kind of goodwill, perhaps if I may use the word goodwill, actually brings the relationship further along, right? And build that kind of trust and gives many of us that confidence, which is really saying that the confidence is the one that helped to build a lot more resilience. And to some extent, like I said, I never felt helpless at all.
Yeah. I mean, to that point of people, Aileen, there was a professor actually, one of my favorite professor actually at Harvard. His name is Felix, and we asked him actually that, sir, you've taught us everything about strategy. Can you tell us something which is the mother of all strategy? Like at the end, what really matters? Like just in one line, he said, it's about people. At the end of the day, it's all about people, how you deal with them, how you make them feel, and how you bring them around, whether it is your direct report, whether it is your partner, competitor, your bosses, anybody actually, even your friends, your family. And if you are able to manage that, that's about it. And then you will be able to execute your strategy. And,
Yes.
and I guess we are grateful to be, while a lot of people say, oh, HR, and I mean, I run a newsletter called HR is not a cost center, because first thing that I hear about HR is, HR, it's a cost center from the business leaders. And I feel we are so grateful to be in HR because we get to deal with people and we get to understand that, and of course make an impact. I think that's pretty fortunate, and from your perspective, basically that is something to learn from as well. That it's all about people, Aileen. Yeah.
Indeed. And I also do see that when it comes to people itself, it's the job of a leader. So it's not the job of the HR leader.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, so the question right now is that we as a leader, and in my case, I say I am a leader, but I have a practice domain. My practice domain is HR. But that doesn't limit me to just doing HR work per se.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, I'm a good business leader from that perspective, but I know a lot about HR.
Yeah.
Now, then the question right now is that how do I extend this domain knowledge that I have, a HR domain, to enable me to be a better business leader?
Yeah.
Right? And at the same time, also enable my fellow colleagues to be better leader and better people leader.
Yeah.
So that really would truly, I would say that multiply, right? It will multiply, it create a multiply effect whereby you're able to multiply impact in terms of better developing your people, better engaging your people.
Thank you so much, Aileen. And before we let you go, we are going into our rapid fire segment. So basically, short and sweet question and short and sweet answers from you. So I shall go first. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's your go-to way to unwind after work?
Home.
What is one HR myth you wish would disappear forever?
Performance.
If HR had a superpower, what should it be?
That's a good one. I want to have a magic wand.
And what's the best career advice you have ever received?
Control your destiny or someone else will.
Love that one.
If you would automate one part of your job tomorrow, what would it be?
Decision.
Last question. I think I already have the answer. If you weren't in HR, what would you be doing?
Teacher.
And with that, Aileen, thank you so much for sharing your journey insights with us today. And that brings us a close to season 5 opener. We've covered a lot today. Aileen's leadership around to Singtel's big people strategy. And I keep hearing this word coming up over and over again, democratize. And it really brings very refreshing reflection on how one would always imagine for a company with 25,000 headcount, 30,000 headcount, they will move like a dinosaur. That's the common perception.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it seems like once you throw in a dose of democracy and you trust the people, magic happens, and it can work even faster than a startup.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that Aileen, today when I sat with you, fortunate to sit with you for an hour through the podcast, that learning is a mindset. You see, as humans, we are wired actually that even though how much ever we train ourselves, when somebody will appreciate us, we will like it. And when somebody will not, at the end of the day, we are listening, but we would always dream that everything is appreciation. So when you, as a young professional, when your mentor and your manager at that time gave you that feedback, you used it as a learning curve and you used it for yourself. And now you are here as the HR leader and somebody, meaning my job is actually to work with the HR leaders. And I've always heard good things about you. So one thing that I take back from this podcast is that learning is a mindset. It's not a course. And you should be always thinking about how can I learn, whether it is a feedback which is constructive or whether it is a feedback which I could basically help improve. So yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Thanks for a really a wonderful session. For me to share my perspective. Like I said, I'm learning every day, and people who know me will tell you that I always tell people, every day I'm 40% irrelevant, right? So I have to make sure that I continuously learn to stay relevant.
That'll be our soundbite for this episode.
Yes,
I'll
absolutely.
always be
Yeah.
40% irrelevant.
Yeah.
And to all our listeners, viewers out there, please continue to follow us. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We love your feedback. And if you have any special guests that you want us to feature, feel free to drop it into the comments. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.